In the parking lot, my wife and I spotted our daughter huddled in an old van with our little grandson. "Where's the house we gave you?" I asked, voice steady. She broke down sobbing. "My worthless husband and his cunning mother took everything and threw us out like trash." I looked at her and said calmly, "Pack your things. Revenge starts now."
Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now.
My name is Harold Coleman. I'm 67 years old, and I've spent 35 of those years as a senior insurance fraud investigator. Retired 4 years ago, but let me tell you something about fraud investigators. We never really stop looking. We just redirect our attention. These days, that attention goes to my garage workshop, where I restore antique radios from the 1940s and 50s. Got 23 of them now, all working, all beautiful. There's something satisfying about taking something broken and making it whole again. But the most satisfying thing in my life, that would be my wife, Virginia. We've been married 43 years. Met her when I was investigating a suspicious claim at Mission Hospital in Asheville. She was a nurse in the emergency department, sharp, warm, and completely unimpressed by my badge. I asked her 3 times for coffee before she said yes. Best persistence of my life. Virginia has this way of looking at people that goes straight through whatever mask they're wearing. 30 years in emergency medicine taught her that. Me? I catch lies in paperwork. She catches lies in people's eyes. We built a good life here in Asheville, North Carolina. Our house on Hickory Lane, 4 bedrooms. Bought it 30 years ago when the neighborhood was nothing but trees and dreams. Raised our daughter Megan here. Watched her take her first steps in the backyard. Taught her to ride a bike on this street. Megan. Just thinking about her makes my chest tight. She married Devin Mercer 9 years ago. I remember the wedding. Virginia squeezed my hand during the ceremony, and I knew she felt it too. Something off about that boy. Oh, he was charming enough. Sales manager at a car dealership, always had the right smile, the right handshake. But charm without substance is just manipulation in a nice suit. The change didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, like water wearing down stone. First, Megan stopped calling as often. Then she stopped coming to Sunday dinners. When we did see her, she seemed smaller somehow, quieter. Our bright, laughing girl had dimmed. "It's his mother," Virginia told me one night, about 3 years into the marriage. "Patricia. She's got her hooks in both of them." Patricia Mercer, 63 years old, calls herself an investment consultant. I've met snakes with warmer eyes. She walked into our home exactly once, looked around like she was appraising livestock, and spent the entire dinner talking about money. Not earning it, taking it. Smart investments, she called them. I called them something else, but Virginia kicked me under the table before I could say it. When Megan and Devin needed a house, we did what parents do. We helped. Bought them the place on Willow Creek Road, $485,000. Put the deed in Megan's name only because something told me to protect her. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was watching Patricia's eyes narrow when she heard about the purchase. "You should have put Devin's name on it too," Patricia said at the time, sweet as antifreeze. "They're married after all." "They are," I agreed, "but it's a gift to our daughter." The look she gave me could have curdled milk. That was 6 years ago. And then came that Saturday in mid-March. Virginia and I were heading to Harris Teeter on Merriman Avenue. Normal day. Sunny, bit of a chill in the air. We'd been talking about our grandson Ethan, about maybe taking him fishing when the weather warmed up. Normal things, good things. Then I saw the van. It was parked at the far end of the lot, tucked between a dumpster and a delivery entrance. A 1998 Ford Econoline. Faded blue, rust spots on the wheel wells. I knew that van. We'd given it to Megan years ago for camping trips. "Virginia," I stopped walking. "Isn't that—" She was already moving toward it. The windows were covered with those silver sunshades from the inside. I walked around to the driver's side, heart hammering, and knocked on the glass. No response. Knocked again, harder. The shade moved. A face appeared. Megan. My daughter. My little girl. Hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes, face swollen from crying. Behind her, curled up in a sleeping bag on the back seat, was Ethan, 8 years old, clutching a stuffed dinosaur I'd bought him last Christmas. I opened the door. The smell hit me first. Stale air, fast food wrappers, desperation. Their belongings were piled everywhere. Clothes in garbage bags, books, a small TV. Everything they owned crammed into a van in a parking lot. "Daddy?" Megan's voice cracked. I didn't want you to see." Virginia pushed past me, pulling our daughter into her arms. I stood there watching my grandson wake up, watching confusion turn to recognition, turn to shame on his small face. "Grandpa," he whispered, "are you mad?" I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Where's the house, Megan?" I finally managed. "Where's the house we gave you?" She broke then, collapsed against Virginia, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "He took it," she choked out. "Devin and his mother, they took everything. They made me sign papers, said it was for refinancing, said we'd get $40,000 for repairs and a lower rate. His mom was there. She witnessed it, and then a week ago Devin told me to get out. Said the house was his now, his and Patricia's. I called the police, Daddy. I called them, but he had the document, and they said it was a civil matter, and I didn't know where to go, and I couldn't face you, and... Slow down." I knelt beside the van, taking her hands. "Tell me exactly what you signed." "I don't know." Devin said it was just refinancing paperwork. I didn't read it all. He kept rushing me, and I felt so strange that day, like I was thinking through fog. And Patricia kept saying it was routine. Everyone does it, and... I looked at Virginia over our daughter's head. Her eyes met mine, and I saw it, the same cold fury building behind her gentle face. "Get in the truck," I said quietly. "Both of you. You're coming home."
I have spent 30 years reading faces in crisis. When you work emergency medicine, you learn that the body tells truths the mouth tries to hide. The way someone holds their shoulders, the particular shade of fear in eyes that have seen too much. I had never wanted to unlearn that skill more than when I saw my daughter's face in that van. Megan looked like a patient I might have triaged, dehydrated, exhausted, showing signs of prolonged stress. But this wasn't a stranger. This was my child. The baby I'd nursed at 3 a.m, the teenager who'd cried on my shoulder about heartbreak. Now she was homeless, living in a van with my 8-year-old grandson. We brought them home to Hickory Lane. I ran a bath for Megan while Harold made soup. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, quiet and watchful. That boy has his grandfather's eyes. Misses nothing. I wondered how much he understood about why his mother was crying. When Megan was wrapped in my old bathrobe, I sat with her on the guest bed. Harold was downstairs giving us privacy. He always knows when I need space to work. "Tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning?" The story came out in fragments. 3 weeks earlier, Devin had come home excited about refinancing their mortgage. Lower interest rates, he said, plus $40,000 for those kitchen repairs Megan had wanted. Patricia was there that evening, just happened to stop by, and she'd brought paperwork, also brought tea. "That tea," Megan said slowly. "Mum, after I drank it, I felt wrong, fuzzy, like everything was happening behind glass. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was cataloguing symptoms, impaired judgment, difficulty processing information, reduced ability to question what was happening. Those weren't signs of tiredness. Those were signs of chemical interference. Devin kept rushing me through the papers," she continued. "Wouldn't let me read them. Said the notary was waiting. We had to finish tonight." Patricia kept patting my hand, saying it was routine, everyone signs these. My hands wanted to shake. I wouldn't let them. A week later, Devin told her to leave. The house, our gift, our protection, was now in his name, and Patricia's. He had a quitclaim deed to prove it. One signature, and Megan had unknowingly surrendered everything. When she'd refused to leave, he'd called the police. They said it was a civil matter. Take it to court. "I took Ethan that night," Megan whispered. "Just grabbed what we could carry. I've been in the van ever since. I couldn't tell you. I was so ashamed. You and Dad gave us that house, and I lost it because I was stupid enough to trust my own husband." "Stop!" I took her face in my hands. "You are not stupid. You were deceived by someone who was supposed to love you. That is not your fault." She crumpled against me, And I held her like I did when she was small, when a nightmare was just a bad dream and not a living, breathing man she'd married. Later, after Megan and Ethan were asleep in the guest room, I went downstairs. The house was dark except for the kitchen. Harold sat at the table, papers spread before him, notes, timelines, names. The lamp cast sharp shadows across his face. I knew that look. I'd seen it 1,000 times over 43 years. It was the look he got when he'd found a thread to pull, a lie to unravel. It was the look that had put fraudsters and thieves behind bars. They drugged her. I sat across from him. That tea affected Megan's cognition. Harold nodded slowly. I figured. Our daughter wouldn't sign away her home while thinking clearly. What do we do? He looked up at me. My Harold, 67 years old, grey at the temples, lines around his eyes. But those eyes themselves? Sharp as the day I met him. Sharper, maybe. Tomorrow I'm calling Nathan Burke, best real estate attorney I know. Then I'm going to dig. I corrected him. We are going to dig. This isn't just your fight. A smile flickered across his face. Never thought otherwise, sweetheart. I'm the hammer. You've always been the scalpel. I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and certain. They think they got away with it, I said. Patricia and Devin. They think they outsmarted everyone. They made one mistake. Harold's voice carried an edge I'd learned to recognize over 4 decades. They hurt our daughter, made our grandson sleep in a van, and they did it by committing fraud. He squeezed my hand. Fraud I can prove. Where do we start? The document, the notary, the timeline, and then we find out if Patricia has done this before. People like her don't stop at one victim. I nodded slowly. I might know something. The nurses' network in this town hears everything. There were rumours about Patricia a few years back. Something about a widow named Sanders who lost money. Harold wrote the name down. See? Scalpel. We sat together in the dim kitchen, hands intertwined, planning. This was how we'd always worked. Him finding patterns in papers, me finding patterns in people. 2 different skills, one shared purpose. Before we went upstairs, I looked in on Megan and Ethan. They were sleeping in the guest bed together, my daughter's arm wrapped protectively around her son. Ethan still clutched that stuffed dinosaur Harold had bought him. My chest ached with love and fury in equal measure. In our bedroom, Harold paused at the window, looking out at the quiet street. They picked the wrong family, he said softly. I stepped beside him, slipping my arm through his. Yes, they did. Sleep didn't come easy. I lay awake running through everything, the tea, the rushed signing, the impossibly fast registration of the deed. This wasn't amateur work. This was practiced and refined, which meant there had been other victims before Megan. I would find them. And then Harold and I would do what we'd done for 43 years, protect our family, together.
The next morning, I found Megan in the kitchen before dawn. She was staring at a cup of coffee like it held the answers to everything that had gone wrong in her life. "Pack your things," I said. She looked up, confused. "You're staying here, both of you, for as long as it takes." "Dad, I can't just—" "Megan." I sat across from her. "Your mother and I didn't raise you to give up, and we didn't spend our lives learning how to catch liars just to watch one steal from our own family." I let that sink in. "The revenge starts now." Her eyes widened. Then slowly, something shifted in them. A spark I hadn't seen in years. "What do you need me to do?" "For now, rest. Take care of Ethan. Let your mother and me handle the heavy lifting." I stood, kissed her forehead. "We've got work to do." By 9 that morning, I was on the phone with Nathan Burke. Nathan and I go back 25 years. Met when I was investigating a suspicious claim involving one of his clients. He's 61 now, a real estate attorney with a reputation for being both brilliant and relentless. More importantly, he hates fraudsters almost as much as I do. "Harold," Nathan said when he picked up, "don't tell me you're bored in retirement again." "Worse, it's family." The pause told me he understood the gravity. Blue Ridge Diner, noon. The diner was quiet when I arrived. Nathan was already there, a folder open in front of him, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up as I slid into the booth. "You look like a man who's about to ruin someone's day," he said. "Several someone's, if I do this right." I laid it all out. The house we'd gifted Megan, the supposed refinancing, the quitclaim deed, the eviction. Nathan listened without interrupting, his face growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he pulled the copies of the documents I'd brought, studied them for a long moment. "The notary," he said finally. "Robert Hensley." "You know him?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "I know of him. His name came up about 5 years ago in a couple of questionable real estate transfers. Cases got dropped. Insufficient evidence." He tapped the document. "Looks like he's still at it." I felt that familiar tingle in my gut, the one that told me I was pulling at a thread that would unravel something bigger. "If we can prove undue influence or fraud," Nathan continued, "we can get this deed voided. But we need evidence. Hard evidence. That's what I do." Nathan looked at me over his glasses. "Harold, you're retired." "I'm motivated. There's a difference." He almost smiled. "What's your plan?" "First, I need the full transaction history on the Willow Creek property. Registration dates, agents involved, everything." I paused. "Patricia Mercer's listed as some kind of agent on the transfer. Does she have a real estate license?" Nathan made a note. "I'll check. If she doesn't, that's a violation of NC real estate license law. Right there. Second, I want to find out if this notary has been involved in other suspicious transfers, and if Patricia Mercer has any other skeletons." "You think this isn't her first time?" I thought about Patricia's cold eyes, her calculated smile, the way she'd looked at our house like she was pricing it for sale. "People like her don't start with a $485,000 property," I said. "They practice on smaller targets first, work their way up." I finished my coffee. "There are other victims out there. I'm going to find them." Nathan nodded slowly. "I'll start the legal groundwork, but Harold, be careful. If Patricia Mercer is what you think she is, she won't take kindly to someone digging into her business." "Good." I stood, dropped a 20 on the table. "I want her uncomfortable. Uncomfortable people make mistakes." That evening I made another call. Detective Marcus Reynolds, Economic Crimes Division. We'd worked together on a few cases back when I was still active. Good man, sharp. "Harold Coleman," Marcus said when he answered. "Tell me you're not about to make my life complicated." "When have I ever done that?" He laughed. "What do you need?" "Off the record, I need you to run a name. Patricia Mercer, investment consultant. I think she's been running real estate scams targeting seniors." The line went quiet. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was different, serious. "That name's already on our radar, Harold, but we haven't been able to make anything stick." My grip tightened on the phone. "How long?" 3 years. Multiple complaints, but she's careful. Documents always look clean. "They're not clean, they're manufactured. Can you prove that?" "Give me time." Marcus sighed. "I'll dig into what we have. But this stays unofficial until you bring me something solid." "Understood." We hung up. I sat in the darkness of my garage, surrounded by the soft glow of restored radios from another era. Simpler times. Honest signals. I was about to reach for a soldering iron when my phone buzzed. Marcus calling back. "Harold," his voice was tight. "I just pulled our file on Patricia Mercer. She's got more history than I remembered." "How much more?" "Enough. Your daughter isn't the first, and this is bigger than one house."
While Harold was meeting with Nathan, I had my own work to do. I found Megan on the back porch watching Ethan play in the garden. My grandson was chasing butterflies, his laughter cutting through the tension that had settled over our home. Children are remarkable that way. They find joy even in ruins. "Sweetheart," I sat beside her, "I need you to tell me everything about that night. Every detail, no matter how small." Megan looked at me, her eyes still hollowed from weeks of sleeping in a van. "I already told you." "Tell me again. Sometimes we remember things differently the second time." She was quiet for a moment. Then she began. Patricia had arrived around the 7 that evening. Devin had called her, Megan said, invited her over to help with the paperwork. She'd brought a gift, a box of specialty tea from some expensive shop in Asheville. She insisted on making it herself, Megan said. Said it was a special blend, very relaxing. I didn't think anything of it. I made a mental note. The tea. Always the tea. And after you drank it, within 30 minutes I felt floaty, like I was watching myself from outside my body. Devon kept pushing papers at me, pointing where to sign. When I asked to read them, he said there wasn't time. The notary was charging by the hour. She shook her head. It sounds so stupid now. It's not stupid, it's manipulation. I kept my voice calm, but inside I was cataloguing everything. Sedatives in tea, rushed signing, pressure tactics. This wasn't improvised. It was a script Patricia had written before. The notary, I said carefully. Did he verify who you were? Ask questions? He barely looked at me, just pointed at the signature lines and dated the documents. Megan's voice cracked. Mum, I signed away my own house, and I don't even remember doing it clearly. I pulled her close. That's exactly what they wanted. And it's exactly what's going to help us prove they committed fraud. After our conversation, I went to my study and opened my journal. I've kept one for 40 years. Observations, thoughts, details that might seem meaningless at the time, but often prove valuable later. I wrote down everything Megan had told me. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Beverly Torres was a nurse I'd worked with for 15 years at Mission Hospital. Sharp mind, sharper tongue, and a memory like a steel trap. More importantly, Beverly knew everyone in Asheville and had heard every piece of gossip that had circulated through this town in the last 3 decades. Virginia Coleman, she said warmly when she answered, please tell me you're finally ready for that lunch we've been postponing. Soon, Bev, I promise. But right now, I need your memory. Should I be worried? It's about Patricia Mercer. The pause was telling. Beverly knew something. That woman, Beverly said finally, her voice dropping. Virginia, what's she done now? Now? You mean she's done something before? Years ago, maybe 4, 5 years back, there was a widow in my church group, Gloria Sanders, lost her husband to cancer, sold the house, had some money saved. Patricia convinced her to invest it in some real estate opportunity. Beverly's voice turned bitter. Gloria never saw a penny of it back. $127,000 just gone. My heart rate quickened. Did Gloria go to the police? She did. Nothing came of it. Patricia had documents with Gloria's signature, said it was all legitimate. Case closed. Beverly sighed. Gloria was devastated, stopped coming to church. I haven't seen her in years. Do you know where she lives now? Beverly gave me an address on the east side of town. I wrote it down carefully. Virginia, Beverly said before hanging up. What is Patricia Mercer to you? My daughter's mother-in-law. Another pause. Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry yet. I'm not done. That evening after dinner, I sat with Harold in the living room. Ethan was asleep. Megan was resting. The house was finally quiet. Nathan thinks we have a case, Harold said, but we need evidence of a pattern, proof that Patricia has done this before. I may have found it. I told him about Gloria Sanders, about the $127,000 that had vanished. Harold's expression didn't change, but I saw his eyes sharpen. 1 victim means coincidence, 2 means pattern. 3 would mean conviction, I finished for him. You're going to talk to this Gloria Sanders? Tomorrow morning. I reached for his hand. What did Marcus say? That Patricia Mercer has been on their radar for years. They've never been able to make anything stick. Harold squeezed my fingers. Until now. We sat together in the lamplight, 2 retired people who should have been worrying about gardening and grandchildren. Instead, we were building a case against a woman who had spent years preying on people's trust. The next morning, I drove to the address Beverly had given me. Gloria Sanders lived in a small cottage near the French Broad River, modest, well kept, with rose bushes along the front walk. I knocked on the door. A moment later, it opened. Gloria Sanders was 71 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much disappointment. She looked at me with the wariness of someone who had learned not to trust strangers. "Mrs. Sanders," I said gently, "my name is Virginia Coleman. I'm told you might know something about Patricia Mercer." The colour drained from her face. "May I come in?" I asked. "I think we may be able to help each other." She stood there for a long moment, hand gripping the doorframe. Then slowly she stepped aside.
While Virginia was tracking down Gloria Sanders, I was doing what I do best, digging through records. The Buncombe County Register of Deeds office hadn't changed much since my last visit years ago. Same fluorescent lights, same smell of old paper and older coffee. The clerk behind the counter, a young woman named Ashley according to her badge, looked up as I approached. "I need the full transaction history on a property," I said. 2134 Willow Creek Road. Ashley typed it in. A few minutes later, she handed me a folder containing everything. Every deed, every transfer, every name attached to that piece of land since it was first developed in 1987. I found a quiet corner and started reading. The original transfer to Megan was clean. Virginia and I had done everything by the book when we gifted her the house 6 years ago. But the recent transfer, the quitclaim deed that had stolen her home, that's where things got interesting. First, the registration date. The document had been signed on a Thursday evening and registered by Friday afternoon. 24 hours. For anyone who's ever dealt with county bureaucracy, that's practically teleportation. Normal processing takes 3 to 5 business days minimum. Someone had paid for expedited service. Someone who wanted this transfer locked in before Megan could change her mind, or before the fog from that tea lifted enough for her to realize what she'd signed. Second, and more damning, Patricia Mercer was listed as the agent facilitating the transfer. Not a witness, not a family friend helping with paperwork, an agent. I pulled out my phone and called Nathan. "Patricia Mercer," I said when he answered. "Does she have a North Carolina real estate license?" I could hear him typing. "Give me a second." "No, no license. Never has had one." "She's listed as an agent on my daughter's property transfer." Nathan swore softly. "That's a violation of NC General Statutes, Chapter 93A. Acting as a real estate agent without a license is a Class 1 misdemeanor." "Good. What else?" "Harold, this is already building into something, but we need more to void the deed." "I'm working on it." After I left the register's office, I drove to the business center on Tunnel Road, where Patricia kept her office. I didn't go in, didn't want to tip her off that someone was watching, but I sat in my car across the street and observed. For 3 hours, the building was unremarkable. Generic offices, accountants, insurance brokers, the kind of place where mid-level businesses rent space. Patricia's office was on the second floor. I watched 2 elderly people enter the building during my stakeout. Both emerged about an hour later, clutching folders, looking slightly dazed. Fresh meat, I thought grimly, or maybe just potential witnesses. I photographed both of them, got their license plates, old habits. That evening I was in my garage, pretending to work on a 1947 Philco radio, when my phone rang. Marcus Reynolds. "Harold," his voice was tight. "Where are you?" "Home." "Why?" "I need you to hear something. But this conversation isn't happening, understand?" "Understood." Marcus took a breath. I dug deeper into the Patricia Mercer files. We've had complaints going back 6 years. 3 formal complaints filed, all from people over 65. All closed due to insufficient evidence. Let me guess. The documents always look legitimate. Every time. Signatures verified. Notarizations proper. Everything by the book. He paused. On paper. But in every single case, the complainant said the same thing. They didn't remember signing what they signed. They felt confused, foggy, pressured. Marcus's voice dropped. "Sound familiar?" My grip tightened on the phone. "How much money are we talking?" "Combined, just from the 3 documented complaints, $419,000. And Harold, those are just the ones who came forward. People like Patricia Mercer, they count on shame keeping victims quiet." I thought about Megan, sleeping in a van because she was too ashamed to ask for help, about how close she'd come to being another silent statistic. "There's more," Marcus continued. The same notary appears on all 3 cases, Robert Hensley. Nathan mentioned him. He should. Hensley's been operating out of Patricia's office building for 4 years. Same floor. Convenient, right? Too convenient. This wasn't a partnership of opportunity. It was a machine, built specifically to steal from vulnerable people and make it look legal. Marcus, I said slowly, what would it take for this to become an official investigation? A victim willing to testify, documentary evidence of fraud, and ideally more than one case we can link together. What if I told you I might have all 3? The silence stretched. When Marcus spoke again, there was something like hope in his voice. Then I'd say, bring me everything you've got. And Harold, don't let Patricia Mercer know you're coming. I hung up. Virginia was standing in the garage doorway, her silhouette framed by the kitchen light behind her. Marcus called? She asked. Patricia has been doing this for at least 6 years. 3 documented victims. Over $400,000 stolen. Same notary on every case. Virginia nodded slowly. I found another one. Gloria Sanders. $127,000. That makes 4 victims. 4 that we know of. Harold. Virginia stepped closer, her eyes bright with purpose. If there are 4, there are more. We need to find them all. I took her hand. Then let's go hunting.
The door to Gloria Sanders' cottage closed behind me, and I found myself in a small living room filled with photographs, a lifetime of memories on the walls, a young couple on their wedding day, children growing up, grandchildren taking first steps. In almost every photo, the same kind-eyed man smiled. My husband Walter, Gloria said, noticing my gaze. Passed 4 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry for your loss. She lowered herself into an armchair, moving like someone who carried more than just physical weight. After he died, I sold our house. Too many memories. Too big for just me. She looked at her trembling hands. I had the money from the sale. $163,000. It was supposed to be my security for the years ahead. And then you met Patricia Mercer. Gloria flinched at the name like I'd struck her. She came to me through a friend of a friend. Said she was an investment consultant. Very professional, very kind. Her voice turned bitter. So kind. I sat across from her, keeping my posture open, non-threatening. 30 years in emergency medicine taught me how to make frightened people feel safe enough to talk. What did she offer you? A guaranteed investment. Real estate in the mountains. Vacation cabins. Rental properties. She showed me beautiful pictures. Said I could double my money in 3 years. Gloria's eyes welled with tears she'd probably cried 1,000 times before. I gave her $127,000. Everything I had except my emergency fund. What happened next? The first few months she sent me statements, returns of 8, 9%. I thought I was so smart. Gloria wiped her eyes. Then the statement stopped. When I called, she said there had been market complications. When I went to her office, she had documents with my signature saying I understood the risks, that I accepted full responsibility for any losses. But you didn't sign those documents. Gloria shook her head. I signed something at our first meeting, but not that. Not those words. I would never have agreed to those terms. Her voice cracked. I reached over and took her hand. Mrs. Sanders, Gloria, you're not the only one. Her head snapped up. What? My daughter was tricked into signing away her home, a home worth $485,000. Same tactics. Papers that said one thing but turned out to be another. A notary who didn't ask questions. And a feeling afterward of being foggy, confused, like she couldn't quite remember what she'd agreed to. Gloria stared at me. That's exactly how I felt, like watching myself through a window. I think Patricia drugged you. I think she drugged my daughter. I think she's been doing this for years, perfecting her method. The colour returned to Gloria's cheeks, not health, but anger. I went to the police. They said Patricia's documents were legitimate. Case closed. We're building evidence now. My husband was a fraud investigator. He's found 3 other victims, all with the same story as yours. I squeezed her hand. Gloria, If you're willing to testify, you could help us stop her from doing this to anyone else." Gloria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and strong. "For 4 years, I felt like a fool, like I deserved what happened, because I was stupid enough to trust her." She met my eyes directly. "If there's a chance to stop her, I'll do whatever it takes." I drove home with Gloria's information and a promise that our attorney would call her. One more victim added to our case. One more voice. Patricia Mercer hadn't been able to silence. Harold was waiting on the porch when I pulled into the driveway. From his expression, I knew he had news too. "What did you find?" I asked as I climbed the steps. Marcus confirmed 3 documented complaints against Patricia, all from seniors, all with the same notary. He held the door for me. Total known losses, $546,000. "That's not counting our house." "No, that brings it over $1 million. We stood in the hallway, the weight of it settling between us. $1 million stolen, lives shattered, trust destroyed. And Patricia Mercer was still out there, still hunting new victims. "There's something else," Harold said. "Megan found Patricia's business card, Mercer Investment Solutions. It's a registered company." "A company means records," I said. "Clients, victims we don't know about yet." "Exactly." Harold's eyes met mine. "Nathan's filing for a civil suit, fraud, undue influence, elder abuse. But Virginia, this could go further. If Marcus builds a criminal case, then Patricia doesn't just lose money, she loses her freedom." He nodded slowly. "It would take more evidence, more victims willing to come forward." I thought about Gloria Sanders, her hands trembling as she recalled her stolen security. About Megan, sleeping in a van with Ethan. About all the other people too ashamed to speak up. "Then we find them," I said. "However many there are, we find them all." Later that night, Megan called us to the kitchen. Between her and Harold lay a worn business card. "I found it in my purse," Megan said. "Patricia gave it to me months ago. Said if I ever wanted to explore investment opportunities, I should call. Mercer Investment Solutions, professional investment consulting." "This is a registered business," Harold said, "which means there are records, client lists, transaction histories." "And other victims," I added. Megan looked between us, something new in her eyes, steel where there used to be only fear. "How do I help?" Harold put his hand on her shoulder. "You already have. This card is how we find the others." Then she said something that made my heart swell with fierce pride. "I want them to pay for what they did. Not just to me, to everyone." I met Harold's eyes across the table. Our daughter was done being a victim. The hunt was on.
The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in patience. I've always said that catching a crook isn't about speed. It's about thoroughness. Miss one piece of evidence and the whole case can collapse. Patricia Mercer had been getting away with her schemes for years because nobody had taken the time to connect the dots. I was going to connect every single one. Using public records and the business registration for Mercer Investment Solutions, I started building a web. Complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau, civil court records, property transfers that seemed routine on the surface but showed Patricia's fingerprints underneath. Within 10 days, I had found 3 more potential victims beyond Gloria Sanders. All elderly, all targeted through investment opportunities, all left with nothing but documents that somehow bore their signatures on terms they swore they'd never agreed to. Margaret Poole, 74 years old, had lost $89,000, her retirement savings. Robert Chester, 68, had been separated from $203,000, an inheritance from his late brother. Both told the same story. Patricia's warmth, the paperwork that seemed straightforward, the fog that descended during signing, the documents that later said something completely different. "The pattern is undeniable," I told Nathan over coffee at the Blue Ridge Diner. "Same method, same notary, same outcome. This isn't opportunistic fraud. It's a systematic operation." Nathan nodded, spreading documents across the table. I've drafted the civil complaint: fraud, undue influence, elder abuse, breach of fiduciary duty. We're naming both Patricia and Devin as defendants. What about the notary, Robert Hensley? He's a witness for now, but if he cooperates, he could be the key to everything. Nathan paused. What's our total damages? I'd calculated it a dozen times. The house, $485,000. Gloria Sanders, $127,000. Margaret Poole, $89,000. Robert Chester, $203,000. Add punitive damages, and we're looking at a lawsuit north of $1.2 million. Nathan whistled softly. That's enough to get their attention. That's the point. The lawsuit was filed on a Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Coleman? The voice was tight, barely controlled. Devin, what do you think you're doing? I think I'm protecting my family. You should try it sometime. This lawsuit is ridiculous. Megan signed those papers willingly. You have no case. Then you have nothing to worry about. I kept my voice pleasant. See you in court, Devin. He hung up. I looked at Virginia, who was watching from the kitchen doorway. That was fast, she said. Scared people move quickly. Let's see what he does next. What he did next was monumentally stupid. 2 days later, Megan's phone rang while we were eating dinner. She answered, listened for 30 seconds, and went pale. Dad, she said, her voice shaking. He says if we don't drop the lawsuit, he'll take Ethan away from me. He'll fight for full custody. I set down my fork. Put him on speaker. Devin's voice filled the kitchen, dripping with false confidence. You hear me, old man? Drop this lawsuit, or I'll make sure Megan never sees her son again. I've got lawyers, too. I'll bury you in... Devin. I kept my tone conversational. Did you know that North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recording phone calls? Silence. That means Megan can legally record any conversation she's part of without telling you. I leaned toward the phone. She's been recording all your calls since the day we found her in that van, including this one. The silence stretched longer. You just threatened to use your own child as leverage in a custody dispute to obstruct a fraud investigation? I smiled. Our lawyer's going to love this. Have a good evening. Megan ended the call. Her hands were trembling, but when she looked at me, there was fire in her eyes. I recorded it, she said. Every word. That's my girl. Virginia came around the table and wrapped her arms around our daughter. Over Megan's shoulder, she caught my eye. They're panicking, her look said. Good, mine replied. The next morning, Marcus Reynolds called with news that changed everything. Harold, I need you to sit down. I'm sitting. The FBI has opened a preliminary investigation into Patricia Mercer. Wire fraud. She's been moving money across state lines. They found victims in Georgia and Tennessee, too. I let that sink in. Wire fraud was federal. Federal meant serious prison time. How did the FBI get involved? Anonymous tip, Marcus said. Someone sent them a very detailed summary of Patricia's operations, complete with victim names and transaction records. I smiled. That anonymous tip had taken me 3 days to compile. The civil case is still yours, Marcus continued, but Harold, Patricia Mercer is about to have much bigger problems than a lawsuit. I hung up and found Virginia in her greenhouse, tending to her orchids. She looked up as I entered. Marcus? She asked. The FBI is involved. Wire fraud charges. Patricia's empire is about to collapse. Virginia was quiet for a moment. Then she set down her watering can and walked over to me. We're really going to beat them, she said softly. All of them. We already have, sweetheart. They just don't know it yet.
The call from Devin had shaken Megan, but something else had happened too. I watched her in the days that followed, and I saw the last remnants of the woman who'd married him falling away. In their place was someone stronger. Someone who had finally stopped making excuses for the man who had betrayed her. Mum, she said one afternoon while Ethan played in the backyard, I'm filing for divorce. I took her hand. Are you sure? I should have done it years ago. I kept thinking he'd change, that if I just tried harder, loved better, he'd become the man I thought I married. She shook her head slowly. But that man never existed. He was always this. I just didn't want to see it. What changed? Megan looked out the window at her son, chasing fireflies in the fading light. He threatened to take Ethan from me, used our child as a weapon to protect his own crimes. Her voice hardened. I will never forgive him for that. Not ever. I pulled her close and held her tight. My daughter was finally free from the illusion of her marriage. 3 days later, Patricia Mercer came to our door. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I heard the car pull up. Through the window I watched her emerge from a silver Mercedes, perfectly styled hair, expensive blazer, the same cold elegance I remembered from years ago. She marched up our front walk like she owned the place. Virginia. Harold appeared beside me. She's here. I see her. Want me to handle it? No. I straightened my shoulders and smoothed my cardigan. This one's mine. I met Patricia on the porch, my phone already recording in my cardigan pocket. She smiled when she saw me, that practiced, venomous smile I'd learned to recognize over the years. Mrs. Coleman, I was hoping we could talk, woman to woman. About what exactly? About ending this unpleasantness. She clasped her hands in front of her, the picture of reasonableness. This lawsuit is causing problems for everyone involved. Surely we can find a solution that works for all of us. A solution? Exactly. Her smile widened. What if we offered Megan $50,000 to walk away? A fresh start. She could find a new place, begin rebuilding her life. Everyone wins. I let the silence stretch until her smile began to falter. You stole our daughter's house, I said quietly. A house worth $485,000. A house we bought for her with our retirement savings, and you're offering $50,000? The market value is debatable. You also stole $127,000 from Gloria Sanders. I watched her face twitch. $89,000 from Margaret Poole, $203,000 from Robert Chester. Patricia's mask cracked. Underneath was something ugly, fear mixed with barely contained fury. Those are all lies, baseless accusations. Those people signed. They signed papers you switched, papers a corrupt notary witnessed without reading, papers they agreed to after drinking tea you brought them. I stepped closer. We know everything, Patricia, and so does the FBI. The colour drained from her face. The FBI? Wire fraud, moving stolen money across state lines. They have victims in 3 states now. I tilted my head. Did you really think no one would ever connect the dots? Patricia's composure shattered completely. You don't know what you're doing. You're just a retired nurse. You have no idea who I am or what I'm capable of. I know exactly who you are. My voice was calm, steady, the voice I'd used for 30 years to deliver difficult news to frightened families. You're a predator who targets vulnerable people. You took their trust and their money, and you left them with nothing. You did it to Gloria Sanders and Margaret Poole and Robert Chester and dozens of others we haven't even found yet. I stepped closer, and Patricia actually stepped back. But the biggest mistake you ever made, I continued, was doing it to my daughter, because now you've given me a reason to spend every minute of my retirement making sure you never hurt anyone else. Patricia's face twisted. You think you've won? I have lawyers, connections. I'll destroy you. You'll what? I smiled. Take us to court. Please do. We have recordings. We have witnesses. We have a pattern of fraud so clear that even a first-year law student could see it. You're recording this. It wasn't a question. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, I said sweetly. My husband mentioned that, didn't he? For a long moment, Patricia Mercer stood frozen on our porch, her entire carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Then she turned and walked back to her car without another word. That evening, Harold got a call from Marcus. The FBI is ready to move, Marcus said. They're building a federal case. Patricia Mercer is going down. Hard. Harold hung up and looked at me. In his eyes I saw the same fierce satisfaction I felt, burning in my own heart. It's almost over, he said. I took his hand and squeezed it tight. Almost.
The Buncombe County Superior Court building had that particular smell all courthouses share: old wood, paper, and decades of human drama soaked into the walls. I'd testified in dozens of courtrooms during my career, but walking into this one felt different. This wasn't professional. This was personal. Virginia sat beside me in the gallery, her hand resting on mine. Behind us sat Gloria Sanders, Margaret Poole, and Robert Chester. Three people Patricia Mercer had thought would stay silent forever. Across the aisle, Devin slumped in his chair like a man watching his life collapse in slow motion. Patricia sat ramrod straight beside him, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the white knuckles gripping her designer purse. Nathan had prepared brilliantly. He'd laid out our case piece by piece over the course of 2 days: the fraudulent quitclaim deed, the pattern of similar crimes, the testimony of multiple victims who all told the same devastating story. But the moment that broke everything open came when the notary took the stand. Robert Hensley was 54 years old and looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Nathan approached him carefully, the way you approach a cornered animal. "Mr. Hensley, you notarized the quitclaim deed that transferred the Willow Creek property from Megan Mercer to Devin Mercer and Patricia Mercer. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Did you verify that Mrs. Mercer was signing willingly and with full understanding of the document?" Hensley's eyes darted to Patricia. She stared straight ahead, giving him nothing. He swallowed. "I followed standard procedure." "Standard procedure includes verifying the signatory's mental state and willingness, doesn't it?" "Yes." "And did you do that?" Silence. The courtroom held its breath. "Mr. Hensley," Nathan pressed, "this is a civil trial, but there is a federal investigation ongoing. If you've committed notary fraud, the difference between cooperation and obstruction could mean years of your life." Patricia's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. Hensley was sweating now, his hands shaking. "Did Patricia Mercer pay you to notarize documents without proper verification?" The dam broke. "Yes," Hensley whispered, $2,000 per document. She said no one would ever check. Said the people were willing, they just needed things moved along quickly." "How many documents did you notarize for her?" Hensley closed his eyes. 14, maybe 15. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Patricia's lawyer was on his feet, objecting to everything, but I barely heard any of it. 15 documents. 15 victims. 15 lives Patricia Mercer had destroyed. Nathan wasn't finished. He introduced the audio recordings. Devin threatening custody. Patricia offering $50,000 to make the lawsuit disappear. He presented the expert testimony about Megan's cognitive state at the time of signing. He showed the FBI's preliminary findings. Patricia Mercer had been running this scheme for at least 8 years, across 3 states, with total estimated damages exceeding $2 million. When he rested his case, the defense barely mounted a fight. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that the documents were legitimate, that the victims had simply made bad investments. But with Hensley's confession on the record, even he seemed to know it was hopeless. The judge's ruling came swiftly. The quitclaim deed, transferring property at 2134 Willow Creek Road, is hereby declared null and void on grounds of fraud and undue influence. The property shall be restored to Megan Mercer immediately. I heard Virginia gasp beside me, heard Megan sob with relief somewhere behind us. The judge continued. Defendants Patricia Mercer and Devin Mercer are jointly and severally liable for damages in the amount of $847,000, to be distributed among the plaintiffs as specified. Additionally, defendants shall pay all legal fees and court costs. Patricia's face went white. Devin looked like he might be sick. The judge wasn't done. I am also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution, and I understand the FBI has an ongoing federal investigation. The defendants should prepare accordingly. As the courtroom began to empty, I walked over to where Devin sat frozen in his seat. Patricia was already being ushered out by her lawyer, but Devin hadn't moved. "Devin," I said quietly. He looked up at me with hollow eyes. "You know what the funny thing is?" I kept my voice calm, almost friendly. "If you'd just asked for help, if you'd come to us and said you were struggling, that you needed money, we would have given it to you. We're not rich, but we're family. We would have helped." He said nothing. But you didn't ask. You and your mother, you decided to steal from our daughter, to drug her, forge documents, throw her and your own son out on the street. I shook my head. You chose to be criminals instead of asking to be family. I didn't. His voice cracked. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Mom said, your mother said a lot of things. I straightened up. And now she's going to say them to the FBI. I hope she's as convincing with them as she was with you. I turned and walked away, leaving him sitting there alone. Virginia met me in the hallway. Her eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling. It's over, she said. Almost. I took her hand. One more thing to do.
3 months after the trial, the world had changed completely. Megan and Ethan moved back into the house on Willow Creek Road on a sunny morning in late summer. I stood in the driveway and watched my daughter carry boxes through the front door, her head held high, her steps confident. The woman who had been sleeping in a van 6 months ago was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and finally free. "Grandma!" Ethan came running across the lawn, his arms outstretched. I caught him and held him tight, breathing in the simple joy of this moment. "What do you think of your room?" "It's the best. Mum says I can paint it any colour I want." He looked up at me with bright, excited eyes. "I'm going to paint it blue, like the sky." "That sounds absolutely perfect, sweetheart." Harold appeared beside me, watching our grandson race back into the house. "He's going to be okay," he said quietly. "They both are. Finally." The divorce had been finalised 2 weeks ago. Devin hadn't contested anything, not the custody arrangement, not the property division, not even the restraining order Megan had filed. According to Nathan, Devin was too busy dealing with his own mounting legal problems to fight for anything. He'd lost his job at the dealership within days of the trial. Word had spread about what he'd done, and nobody wanted to buy a car from a man who'd stolen his wife's home. Last I heard, he was living in a basement apartment on the other side of town, working part-time at a warehouse. The man who had once dreamed of easy money and comfortable living was now scraping by, alone. But Patricia's fate was something else entirely. The FBI had arrested her 2 weeks after our civil trial. Wire fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud. The federal investigators had uncovered victims in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina. The total amount stolen exceeded $3 million across nearly 24 victims. She was being held without bail, deemed a flight risk. Her trial was scheduled for next spring, and the federal prosecutor was confident. 20 years, he'd said, maybe more. Gloria Sanders had called me the day of Patricia's arrest, crying with relief. "I never thought I'd see her face consequences," she said. "I'd given up hope years ago." "Never give up hope," I told her. "Sometimes justice just takes time." Margaret Poole and Robert Chester had both received partial compensation from Patricia's seized assets. It wasn't everything they'd lost, but it was acknowledgement that they hadn't been fools. They'd been victims of a sophisticated predator. On this particular Sunday, our house on Hickory Lane was full of people and noise and life. Megan was in the kitchen helping me prepare dinner. Ethan was in the living room, engaged in a serious chess match with his grandfather. Gloria Sanders had stopped by with a homemade pie, and she was sitting in the sunroom chatting with Nathan Burke about gardening. This was what Patricia Mercer had tried to destroy: family, community, trust, and she had failed completely. I paused in the kitchen doorway, watching the scene unfold before me. Harold looked up from the chessboard and caught my eye. He smiled, that familiar, slightly crooked smile I'd fallen in love with 43 years ago. I walked over and sat beside him. Ethan was studying the board intently, trying to find a way out of the trap his grandfather had set. "You're going to let him win, aren't you?" I whispered. "Eventually." Harold's hand found mine under the table. "But he needs to earn it first." After dinner, when the dishes were done and the guests had gone home and Ethan was asleep in his new blue bedroom, Harold and I sat together on our back porch. The evening air was warm, carrying the scent of summer flowers and the distant sound of crickets. We did it, I said softly. Harold turned to look at me. In the fading light, I could still see the young man I'd met at Mission Hospital, sharp, determined, patient. The grey at his temples and the lines around his eyes were just evidence of a life well lived together. We always do, he said. Together. I leaned my head against his shoulder. They thought we were just a retired couple, easy targets. They underestimated what we'd do for our family. We sat together in the gathering darkness, two people who had built a life on patience and trust, and the unwavering belief that some things were worth fighting for. Patricia Mercer had thought she could steal from our family and walk away clean. She had no idea that 43 years of marriage had turned us into something unstoppable, a team that had faced every challenge and come out stronger. Harold, I said quietly, thank you for everything. He squeezed my hand. Thank you for never giving up on our family. I closed my eyes, breathing in the peace of the evening. Our daughter was safe. Our grandson was thriving. Justice had been served. They thought we were just an old couple, I murmured. Easy prey. Their mistake. They didn't know we were a team that never quits. I opened my eyes and looked at my husband. And that justice isn't revenge. It's restoring what was stolen. Harold raised my hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Come on, he said, pulling me to my feet. It's getting late. We walked inside together, closing the door on the past and stepping into whatever came next, side by side, as always.
If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.